Lifting Operation Management System. Requirement. Applicability. Legal and regulatory requirements are to be followed. Specific exclusions from the applicability of the standard, prohibiting personnel from riding or traveling on the load or any lifting medium, prohibiting equipment which is not the equipment primary purpose unless with a risk assessment approved by the relevant competent person. Roles and responsibilities. Roles responsibilities shall be to the numbers for lifting operations. Alternatively, a lifting SME from the respective oil gas operator may approve other role designations where it can be demonstrated they align to the numbers. All lifting operations shall be planned, executed, verified, and adequately supervised by competent people. Competency of personnel, appropriate training, experience, skill, knowledge assessment, task performance, working environment, role, accountability, risk assessment, lift planning. Site survey, risk assessment, prepare, authorize, execute, monitor, complete, learn and record. Categorization of lifting operations, categorizing operations specific to the lifting environment, categorization reflecting the complexity of the operation. Defining lifting operations as either repetitive tasks or non-repetitive tasks, segregation of non-repetitive tasks into a hierarchical level, based on risk, equipment, environment or complexity. Lift planning, documented lift plans for all lifting operations, matrix process to confirm lift plans are developed approved by a competent person. Lift plans being written in a language understood by workgroup, potentially in dual languages, defining safe operating limits, working in line with OEM instructions, using appropriate contingency factors, effective measure to ensure the stability of loads, equipment and plant is applied, access and egress routes for mobile lifting appliances and transportation equipment. Exclusion zone. Communications, methods of communications being agreed and established prior to lifting, suitable measures for non-repetitive tasks being implemented, clear line of communication between the lift team and facility management, communication plan for unexpected events shall be agreed. Consider any language barriers and mitigations when establishing communications, quality of lifting equipment, selection of vendors and suppliers, specification of equipment, procurement process, quality control assurance process, selection of lifting equipment, safety factors, angles of use, applied loadings or tensions, capacity, connection points, fitness for task condition, competency of personnel, environment, stability, frequency, duration of operation, marking of lifting equipment, identification number of equipment, capacity, safe working load and or working load limit of equipment. Application of color coding to indicate the examination status of equipment, traceability of equipment to its certification date of next inspection, control of lifting equipment, a dedicated storage area or facility of suitable size for housing equipment, facilities, tools, or equipment necessary for maintaining lifting equipment, issue return facility to clearly define the status of equipment, facility to securely quarantine defective or unfit equipment. Register of personnel that are competent to withdraw or receive lifting equipment, stability of lifting equipment, ground conditions, applied bearing pressures, stability components or systems, monitoring systems, stability of ground, access roads shall be strong enough to withstand axle loads of mobile lifting equipment, ground condition is suitable to support the crane under fully loaded conditions, there are no dangers to or from underground services. Additional control measures when working near to exposed edges. Structural integrity of lifting equipment load, pre-use checks of lifting equipment that includes lifting appliances and lifting accessories, pre-use checks of load for potential drop items, verify structural integrity, and pad eyes, trunnion, design, periodic testing, inspection and certification of all lifting equipment and load by an independent third-party lifting inspection body, thorough examination or thorough test by a competent person being carried out to lifting equipment that has undergone major repairs or changes to the load-carrying components. Risk assessments being carried out prior to any test inspection, the asset holder custodian retaining and holding copies of any required documents, thorough examinations and testing of equipment at defined periods, lifting appliances at intervals of no more than 12 months, lifting accessories at intervals of no more than 6 months, any lifting equipment for lifting personnel at intervals of no more than 6 months, written scheme of examination where equipment is not used at regular intervals. Suitable factors of safety, load path suitability to sustain the load, hold points as the load is applied, MPI NDT inspection, load testing and further examination of structural components, accreditation for inspection bodies, have sufficient lifting equipment inspectors holding relevant individual LEEA competencies or equivalent, where LEEA accreditation or equivalent is not available. The relevant operator lifting SME is to review and approve the inspector. Safe operating limits, maximum wind speeds, equipment safe operating limits, visibility, day-nighttime operations, potential loss of power, mechanical protection systems, automated lifting control systems, operator error, potential load obstruction, lift route checkpoints, confirmation of clear lifting route, potential loss of primary containment, pre-lift depressurization. Minimize the time height the load is near to or above process safety equipment, effects of wind, OEM maximum allowable operating wind speed shall never be exceeded, PIC shall define the safe operating limits based on the site, equipment, load, and weather conditions. PIC shall document the location method of measuring wind speed that is accurate and appropriate for the lifting operation. PIC shall define factors of safety for loads with a large sail area. The wind speed will likely be higher above the point at which it is measured, and allowances should be made to reflect that uncertified suspension or anchoring points, higher level of risk assessment than developed for normal routine operations, defining a competent authority for approval purposes, if required. A method to permit repeated use under controlled conditions is developed, engineered scaffold designs for higher risk operations, engineering support when uncertified structural steel members are being considered, lifting of personnel. Using lifting appliances which have not been specifically designed for lifting people, such as mobile cranes, shall only occur in exceptional circumstances, completing a higher level of risk assessment than developed for normal routine operations, operations to be approved in the highest level of lift categorization, specific emergency response rescue plan to be developed, specific exclusion zone around the worksite to be implemented, lifting equipment that is certified and suitably marked to lift personnel. Suitable safety factors and margins of safety above required lifting equipment capacities. Prior to commencing with lifting of personnel, a detailed trial lift using all equipment and control measures shall be conducted and approved accepted as safe to proceed, lifting over or near to live plant, higher level of risk assessment than developed for normal routine operations, specific emergency response plan to be developed. Specific exclusion zone around the lifting equipment and or worksite to be implemented, defining factors of safety and or redundancy, consideration to be made for lifting equipment potential collapse radius, hand-safe lifting, when loads can be touched, when loads cannot be touched, hand-safe requirements being defined on the lift plan, application and assessment of tools that reduce or remove the need for touching loads. Safety when using tag lines. Line of fire, escape routes, barriers around the worksite, defining no-go zones and/or safe routes around the worksite, ensuring loads are never suspended or moved over personnel, temporary supporting of loads, temporary support plan, minimizing time loads are supported or secured, defining factors of safety and/or redundancy, defining the attachment points, defining the support equipment being used, risk control measures, movement security of cargo during lifting operation. Managing cargo based on its type or contents designation, security of cargo, potential for movement dropping of loads, verification checks prior to loading unloading, method of slinging lifting loads, methods types of cargo carrying units, evacuation and emergency response, efficient evacuation of personnel, emergency response planning, limiting exposure to essential personnel only, access egress routes, documentation, copy of this OPAL lifting standard being available. Copy or access to any applicable OPAL recognized operator lifting procedure, relevant and up-to-date equipment registers, equipment certificates of conformities, certificates reports of thorough test and/or examination, operating manuals and manufacturer instructions, equipment capacity charts or manuals, competency records and training matrix of all rigging and lifting personnel, register of lift plans, learn and improve. After completing the lifting and hoisting operation, everyone involved in the operation should have the opportunity to discuss and make improvements to the lift plan. Any learning points noted on the lift plan should be reviewed by the person in charge and, where appropriate, action taken. The person in charge should ensure that the significant learnings and improvements identified from the lifting and hoisting operations are recorded and communicated to all relevant parties.